Like Autumn said, my name is Sylvia McAdam. I'm from the treaty7 territory. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I'm working to be and what happened. Now, I grew up a majority of my life in the city, and after I got my law degree, I went home because that's what the elder said. You go home, right? So that's what I did. I went home, and when I went home, it took me back to the land. And in my memory of my childhood, because I grew up off the land, and I didn't even know English. I didn't speak any English until I went to kindergarten. My dad is a hunting trapper. My mom's like scraping the hides type of couple, hey? My dad hardly speaks any English. That's the kind of people I come from. I grew up on traditional food. You give me, duck soup, my favorite soup, or snow soup, that sort of stuff. And when I went back to the land, in my memory, I tried to go back to those lands that I grew up in. And I went back to those waters I thought would still be there, and they were gone. And in its place were those waters were dry. I couldn't find the streams anymore. And then when I went to go back to those, the lands where my dad hunted, they were blocked off. And then when I tried to go back to those cabins, my dad's hunting cabins, they were gone. They were burnt down. And when I asked my dad, where are they? And he said, some people burnt them down. And I asked him, well, who would do that? And he told me it was the conservation officers. They were systematically burning down the hunting cabins of the trappers. So I did find one stream that was still, you could drink directly from. Can you imagine that? It's unheard of today to say you can go to water that you can drink from. But I found one, and I want to invite all of you to come and see those lands before they're completely destroyed. And if you follow me on Facebook, I'm this crazy little Indian Cree woman running around and bulldozers and logging companies, and I'm standing there carrying treaty7 territory, posting these wooden signs on all these trees, right? That was me. And I'm not an activist. I'm not at all. But I was really, really hurt when I see my dad, standing in that spot where his logging cabin, his hunting cabin used to be, and there was a big burn spot there. I have pictures of it. When I come back here to your territory, and I want to thank all of you for inviting me to your beautiful, beautiful territory. I respect you so much for allowing me here. I invite you to come to ours and see what's happening over there. So there's this big burn spot on the ground, and my mom is sitting there. And not even a half mile down the road, there's this big logging company. And I'm standing there posting these treaty6 signs. It stopped them for now. It has stopped them for now, but I don't know how much longer. I don't know how much longer. So that was me. Towards the fall, somebody tagged me on a thing, and I was starting to move away from Facebook because I was just in love with the land. I was running around in a bush there. There's this lawyer, running around in the bush over there. And then somebody tagged me later in the fall, and I started looking at it, not really thinking about it. And I went in there, And I literally had to have my Black's Law Dictionary beside me because it was so hard to read 450 pages. Omnibus Bill C-45. And then I got one of my more trained lawyer friends who had years of law background. I told him, can you read this? I can't understand this. A little while later, they came back to me and said, the Navigable Waters Protection Act is going to be removed. There will be no protection for anyone who drinks water or accesses water. And I was like stunned. I was stunned. And then they told me, there's going to be an amendment to the Indian Act. Your lands are going, the threshold for consent will be lowered to the point where the Aboriginal Affairs Minister can surrender your lands. Even if your chief and your council are not there, they can still surrender or redesignate your reserve lands. And I said, redesignate, what do you mean? They said, and then he said, they'll take a piece of that reserve land and designate it for nuclear waste. And that's exactly what I said. I was like, what? And they're like, yep. And I said, well, we won't show up. And then he said, and then he told me, if 50 people, like in this room right now, if 75% of you said, we'll take the $5 million and we'll surrender our reserve lands, and the other 25% said no, the 75% would win. Gone. Reserve lands are gone. That's what that bill is going to do. And that's the same with that designation. If 75% of the people said, yes, we want nuclear waste designation for reserve land, they will move on that. The Aboriginal Affairs Minister will move on that. And another thing to this bill is, even if all of us here in this room said, no, we don't want it, 100% of us said no. The Aboriginal Affairs Minister has veto to say, well, I think for the best interest of your reserve, I'm still going to go ahead and designate it. That's the kind of power, that's the kind of veto the Aboriginal Affairs Minister has given himself with the Omnibus Bill C-45. See, even if we say no. Now, how does that affect our allies and our European relatives? Well, if you're living next door to that designated piece of land, you're going to be affected by that nuclear waste. That's what's going to happen. That's what we're facing now that it's passed. It's gone through. It is law now in Canada. Now there's other bills coming. There are other bills coming that are just as terrible and just as bad as Bill C-45. There's 13 of them. You go into our blog, www.idonknowmore.ca. You'll find all those bills listed there and how they're going to impact you as a people. There's all kinds of things. And when you go in and look at those bills, you're going to read something like Safe Drinking Act. Who doesn't want safe drinking, right? Anybody wants safe drinking. But when you go in there and you read that document, it has nothing to do with safe drinking. Nothing. All it's going to do is, it's going to take the water on reserve, the building of it, and give it to another company to look after. Therefore, removing the jurisdiction of chief and council. And if anything happens to that water treatment plant, you can't sue the company. And it will be the band to pay for it. That's what that's done. When you go in and read every one of these bills, the title is very misleading because it doesn't really have anything to do with it. And then you go into the Matrimonial Property Act, right? We're under the idea that it's going to deal with the violence against on reserve. But when you go in there, it doesn't even speak to that. It doesn't even talk about that. It will, however, and no offense to our European allies and our European relatives, right? No offense to them. But we have a shortage of land, a shortage of housing. Now the Matrimonial Property Act will give half of our land and half of our houses to people who live off reserve. And I mean the non-status people, right? That's what the Matrimonial Property Act will do. So those are the kind of things that are coming through Parliament. January 28th is when Parliament reconvenes. Of course, I'm not done. There's something in law called acquiescence. Okay, I'm going to tell you how, when I came back to the city, Nina Wilson and I were already talking. I befriended her. We had the same mind in Facebook. And I was telling her all of my gallivanting all over the countryside. And then I told her about Bill C-45. And then she started talking to Jessica Gordon. And then we created a chat room called I Don't Know More. Jessica labeled it that. Only because we were so idle. We were so asleep. I can't believe how much I didn't pay attention, how much I didn't read, how much I didn't, care. And then when we created that chat room, we were meaning ourselves that we were being idle. And then when I don't know if it became popular, we tried to change the name, but it was too late. It was too late. People already knew it by I Don't Know More. And then we have these seasoned activists and environmentalists telling us, are you affirming that we're all idle? And we're like, no. So we have to answer to them. We're like, no, we honor you, absolutely honor you. And we have to explain to them why, and that's how come I'm explaining to you. It's no disrespect to them at all. Absolutely not. But the name seemed to have spoken to people for some reason. And so it stayed. And that's how it's grown. And it's gone global is what I've been told. Right? Is that true? Yeah. I haven't had a chance to look. But I had some friends calling me, Sylvia, I can't believe our nationhood is in your hands. That's frightening. Because I like to joke around, right? I have this res humor. And I'm not going to take our nation and sell it or anything like that. It's possible. But since this is a grassroots movement, we have a very real chance of being designated as self-determining people. We have that very real chance. And I think our European relatives need to understand that at this time where we're at, now that Bill C-45 is removed, our last stand is the treaties. That's the only thing protecting our lands and our waters right now. That's the only thing. And I don't think the Conservatives are going to reconvene on January 28th and say, oops, we made a mistake, sorry. They're not going to do that. They're going to push all these bills through. And when that happens, the environmental assessment is basically removed. The threshold for environmental assessment will be lowered. And in some cases, there will be none for the waterways. There will be none. We're already looking at Fort McMurray. I don't know too much about it. I can't even speak to it. Sheila McLean, the other founder, she's more knowledgeable about that. She's our white sister. At first, when I started using the word white, I was like, does that sound racist? She's like, call me that, I don't care. She's like, that's the term for me. She was so comfortable with it. I was the one that was uncomfortable with calling her white. But now it's like, we've come to she's, I don't know, she says that she's from Treaty 6, and I just love her for that, you know. And there's not a drop of Indian in her. She's Scottish. She's blonde and blue eyes. But I just love that she says that she's from Treaty 6. And she's the one that gave us the confidence to say treaty sovereignty, treaty nationhood. She was the one that gave us our voice, and I love that about her. She understood what colonization and genocide had done to Indigenous people. You know, about 6 months ago, if somebody had said to me that I'm going to be talking about liberation and nationhood and freedom, I would have been like, hey, you're silly, you know. But now today, I understand the depth of Indigenous oppression, the state of our colonization. And for the first time, our drums are being heard in places that have been long been silent, in the lands in which the malls and all these different places have been built. Those were the places when our ceremonies and our drums were once heard. They're being heard again. And I think this is where our young people are feeling the freedom and liberation, because we've been oppressed for so long. If someone had described that to me in that way, I wouldn't have understood it, because I was so normalizing the oppression. I normalized it. And it was Sheila that challenged us, the other founders. The other founders, Jessica is Solo Cree, Nina is Dakota, I'm Cree, some Solo. And it was Sheila that challenged our thinking, because she's the one that researched genocide and colonization, and she was the one that challenged us and allowed us to be louder, not to be screaming like aggressively, not like that, but to stand and say, we are a powerful people, we are a beautiful people. And we started getting used to that because of her. And then we have this chat room on Facebook that's exclusively for the founders, and this is where we take care of each other, like we nurture and speak to each other, and this is where we go and we speak our mind. Everything that you see that's going on with I Don't Know More, we've done it all on Facebook and Skype and phoning. So on January 29th, we're making a call to the world. We're going to have a worldwide, global I Don't Know More. We're already being contacted by New Zealand. They're on board. Australia, Germany, London. I'll be in London during this time. There'll be a rally then. And I got this phone call from Hawaii. They don't have any treaties over there. We're very fortunate here that it's the treaties that protect all of our lands for everyone. I'm not talking about just Indigenous people. I'm talking about everyone. When we talk about children, we're not talking about just Indigenous children. We're talking about all of our children. Because that's the reason why I Don't Know More touched the women first. Like I said, I'm not an activist, so November 10th, we're like, okay, we're gonna have a rally. You know, not knowing what a rally is, I have no idea what a rally is. And then we switched it to call it a teaching, because I'm not a practicing lawyer. I don't practice law. But I am a teacher, I'm an instructor, and Sheila is a high school instructor, like a high school teacher. So we decided to call it a teaching. And it was a blizzard day, and people came out. They filled a hall like this. And there was this one lady, she's a single parent. I knew her from before, I knew her situation. She's a single parent. She walked about 10 blocks to come there to learn about Bill C-45. And I was so touched by that. And these are the grassroots people. And we had more white people there than Indigenous people. And something happened from there. And it just grew. We ended up in Regina. And people would donate a little bit of gas money to us and we'd go to the next city where we were invited, eh? And then when we went to Regina, we had Ralph Goodale supporting us, who was an MP. So we got a little bit of money from there, and then we took off to North Balford the following weekend. And then after North Balford, we ended up in PA. And then after PA, it was Louisville. And then we decided, not knowing, again, I think being naive is where it helps because we didn't know what we were doing. And then we said, hey, let's have a national, national, I don't know more. So December 10th, I ended up in Ottawa, walking with approximately 4,000 people. Who would have, I never in my mind pictured that. But it was a combination of the right situation, the right time. And I'm not saying it was totally us. It was people previous to us who laid seeds all over the place. And it was at that right time that people heard. And when we first put that call out on November 10th, it was mainly the women that answered. I'm not sure how come. Maybe it was because of the language we used. We said, this is for the love of our children. We're doing this for the love of our children. So what you see today is, even me coming here, no one gave me money. No one gave the founders money. It's all volunteer. Everything is volunteer. I refuse to take money because I think this movement is so precious. I don't want anything to taint it. I'm just so, when people hand me money, I'm like, no, like, give it to the elders. I'll be like deflecting this money, right? Give it to the elders. But when I came to Edmonton, the elders said, you can't do that anymore. You have to allow people to assist. So we've set up, finally, with the elders forcing us, we have set up a bank account. I'm still kind of, but we're going to get an accountant so that it's transparent and accountable. So we're doing stuff like that. I'm still trying to reconcile with that. But it's good. It's good now that we have the elders' blessing. So I just came to Edmonton. And the beautiful part about this is, my dad is almost 80 years old. When I first started telling him about I don't know more, he's like, I've seen a lot in my life. It's okay. He's like patting my head. He's like, run along, just like I was a little kid telling him. He's like, it's okay, But our elders have reached that point where I think they've quit dreaming. Not that they've lost hope, but I think they've been oppressed longer than we have, and they no longer dream that. So a week ago when I did see my dad, he was different. There was more of a light in his eyes, and he's asking me questions. Really? They're calling you from Hawaii? I'm like, yeah, Dad, they're calling me from Hawaii. He's like, why would they call you? And I told him there was Indigenous people in Hawaii who don't have treaty, whose waters are contaminated, and they're crying. They're crying. And when I spoke to them, I told them about our dream of nationhood, the very real possibility of having self-determination. I didn't know they started crying. The elders that were listening started crying. And the difference here is our young people are feeling that dream, they're feeling that liberation, they're feeling the oppression falling away. If we can provide that for our young people, we have to provide to them as well the information behind what are treaties, what is colonialism, what is genocide, what is nationhood, what is self-determination. Those are the kind of things we need to start teaching and informing everyone, not just Indigenous people. I'm talking about everyone. We're not doing justice to our non-Indigenous relatives to leave them in the hands of Harper. You know, Sheila, when we started talking self-determination, the three of us are Indigenous people. We're like, yeah, high-fiving each other. We're like, yeah, this is great. And then we looked at Sheila and she's standing there quietly. And then she's like, you guys can't leave me behind to be at the mercy of this government. And then we all went quiet and we're like looking at her like, you know, she's right. And then we told her, okay, we'll colonize you. And then she's like, no, you'll indigenize me. So she's in agreement. We decided that we're going to indigenize our European relatives. And it will be done with love. And it will be done with kindness. Because their government has abandoned them at the mercy of corporations. And we can't allow that. Our law as Indigenous people does not allow that. We can't leave them behind like that. So, I have to go home again tonight. I think it's like an 8-hour drive to Saskatchewan, eh? I got other stuff to do. I gotta teach and I gotta go do it tomorrow. Our young people are taking it upon themselves to do teach-ins with other young people. The perfect example is my cousin's daughter. My cousin is my driver because I get really tired. Her daughter is 22. Tomorrow, she's doing a teach-in, and she's getting it connected to the internet so other young people can log in and listen and learn about Bill C-45 and all the other bills that are coming through. And she did it on her own money. She did it on her own time. Because as she's non-status, she's Métis. She understands that the treaties of Indigenous people are the thing that protects the land and the water right now. That's the only thing that's protecting it. So once even that's gone, we're done for. We are done for as nations. We can all talk about nationhood and sovereignty and self-determination, but at the end of the day, if we don't have clean water, and if our lands are devastated, none of that is going to be it's not going to be important. I have 7 kids. And when I started understanding about the impacts of Bill C-45, I was talking to my kids about it, and my daughters looked at me and said, well, Mom, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And I said, oh, I don't know. Perfect answer. Oh, I don't know. And then they said, well, we're going to do something. And there's something in law called acquiescence. Acquiescence means your compliance is your consent. Which means if I remain silent, then my silence is my consent. And And if the lands and the water are contaminated and they're irreparable, how am I going to answer to my kids when I knew this bill was going through and I did nothing? That was one of my motivating factors. And if any of you know me from before, I've traveled quite extensively. I talk about Indigenous laws. Before our European relatives came to our territory, we were not a lawless people. You can't tell me, and I will dispute you, if you tell me that the Blackfoot people didn't have laws, that the Sioux people didn't have laws. I know for a fact that they had laws. They have laws still today. So I'm coming to you here and telling you, we need to revitalize those laws. They were given to every one of you to live with the land. There was nothing wrong with them. Absolutely nothing wrong with them. More and more, the Muniao science is saying there's something there. There's something there. With the Cree people, there's 4 very significant laws. Pastawin, Pastawin, Utiniwin, Utiniwin. I'll speak about the verbal laws. Pastawin means that verbal law when I interact with human beings. And if I'm gossiping about someone, I've broken that very spiritual law, that human law. And that's the same with nature. Utinimuin means when, like for example, if I'm gonna go hunting and I brag about killing an animal, that's Utinimuin. In that language, Pastamuin means I verbally respect you. I verbally respect human beings. Pastamuin is the sub-law of that. Pastamuin means I physically respect you. See, there's 2 things there. Even with Utiniwin, where you physically respect the environment and you verbally respect the environment. Those are very profound and sacred laws. They were not man-made. They were not given by men, nor were they man-created. They will never change. I'll tell you a quick story. This is a summarized version of it. And I'm 100% sure the Blackfoot have a very similar teaching. I don't believe that there's nothing like it out there. So we need to go back to your education systems, and those are the women. In a Cree culture, the women are the law keepers. And I'll tell you how that came to be. There's a long story. It would take a day to tell this, but I'm telling you a little bit of it. Wisakita was doing his thing out wherever he was, and the Creator told Wisakita, I want you to go to Ukimawasuchi. Ukimawasuchi is Cypress Hills. And he told Wisakita, I want you to climb the highest hill, Ukimawasuchi. And if you go to Cypress Hills, there's this hill there. So he told Wisakita, I want you to sing 4 songs. When you get to the top of that hill, I want you to sing 4 songs. And those 4 songs, one of them is a woman's song. So when he started singing, he sang to the 4 directions. He turned and sang. And it is said that when he sang, the songs could be heard through the world. And he sang those 4 songs. And when he was done, it was then that the Creator gave him the laws to bring to the people to carry, to follow for all time. And it is said that he stayed on that hill for about a year. That's how long it took for the Creator to transfer all those laws to him. And when he came down from that hill, he was exhausted and tired, and he needed to be cared for. And it was the women that And because they took care of him, he transferred the loss to them. So I'm fortunate. I am very lucky that I never went to residential school. I didn't know how unique that was. I didn't know it was unique. I never even heard of residential school until I was like 21 when I was in high school, and then university. And then there's another thing unique about that. My mother and my father never went to residential school.
Altogether?
And as if that wasn't enough,
91, like
my grandparents never went to residential school. I'm not saying we're not colonized, but there's a core of traditional indigenous knowledge that stayed relatively intact.
At 91. Yeah, let me see. Did you get it right?
So that's what I'm going to speak about.
At Gmail?
I grew up with my people's laws. I know about Pasdown, Ochinino. I grew up with all of those.
Thank you, that's awesome.
And I thought everybody else
so
did.
much.
I'll put them on YouTube.
It wasn't until when I started talking about it that I started to realize that not too many people still speak about it. I'll leave you with one more teaching. Everything has a beginning. The teepee, it has a beginning. It has a teaching. Everything has a beginning. It didn't just happen. Why do women have long hair? Why do women wear dresses? Why are the men's lodges still around and the women's lodges had to go underground? Everything has a beginning and a teaching. The reason why I tell about the women is because I can't speak about the men, right? It's not because I'm a woman. Well, that's one of the reasons. But because I would be breaking certain laws if I speak about the men's laws. I can only speak about the women's laws. At the time of treaty making, my mother's people came from the east. So she brought this teaching and was transferred to her over the generations. I'm the fourth generation to carry this knowledge, this teaching. At the time of treaty making, because the Europeans brought their patriarchy with them, they wouldn't listen to the women. So the women said to the men, "You will say this and this and this," right? So the men said, "That we will do that." At the time of treaty making, there was a group of women called Ukititavskoak. I'm almost positive that the Blackfoot people have them. I've heard of these similar women that existed in their lodges as well. Now these women had a lodge called Ukititavskokamik. I have no word in English for Ukititavskoak, but it's kind of like clan mother, warrior woman, kind of that blend of those two. So these women, there's 9 of them. They're the law keepers of that nation, of that group of people. They had a ceremony, and in that ceremony, they knew the land was going to change. They knew that. They never ceded and surrendered. Remember, there's 2 stories here. The women never ceded and surrendered the land. Never. In that ceremony, for 4 days and for 4 nights, those women sat there and they talked about how the land was changing. And there are things in the treaty that they left behind. And in that lodge, they asked for direction, how they should go about what was happening. And there was 6 Atayukana, we call them, the most sacred of spirits that came into that lodge. And the first spirit that came in, that first spirit said, Numa Bisum, I am the sun. And that sun spirit said, I will bear witness to this exchange. Use me, use my name. And then the next spirit is the grass spirit came in and said, Nista, I will bear witness to this covenant, to this sacred exchange between two nations. And then the two spirits came in there, and it's the water spirit, the male and the female. And they said, we're going to bless this as well. And then the very last spirit that came in was the rock. Ximiu Asani, the rock spirit, said, I will be the one to seal this agreement. And this is how come you see, as long as the sun shines, the rivers flow, the grass grows. It came from the women's lodges. And it was those spirits that came to bear witness to that exchange. And those women had to go underground because their ceremonies became illegalized. They became targeted. I've done a lot of research. I'm a researcher. I'm writing my second book. My publisher's telling me, hurry up. For the first time, our elders have allowed our laws to be written down. I can't write the spiritual laws, of course not. No human being can ever write about the spiritual laws. However, I'm going to write about Bastamu and how it affects when you steal, and how it affects when you're gossiping. You know, those kind of things. That's what I got permission to write about. And hopefully I'm about 75% done. I have to get it done soon, I think. My nation, the Cree Nation needs that soon if we're going to move forward with self-determination. I want to leave all of you to think about self-determination. We can all agree that the Indian Act is not working. It is not working. It's not to say that we won't have anything in place of it. We had hereditary structures. There was absolutely nothing wrong with them. Those need to be brought back because the young people had a voice in there. It's been silenced through colonization and genocide. The women are the law keepers. That's how come today you see the state of lawlessness in our communities. Those laws have to come back. There's nothing wrong with them. Absolutely nothing. They're the foundation to our nationhood. And they're the very things that's going to drive our self-determination. So think on that. This is where your elders are going to be instrumental. And always remember that you're not doing this for yourself. My dad tells me, take a handful of the earth. That's how much you own it. The rest of it belongs to the generations to come. That's how much of the earth you can only speak about. The rest you have to leave it alone because it doesn't belong to you. That way. Okay, I want to quickly say at the time when creation was made, the air was given to the men to take care of. I always speak about the women, but the men have their responsibilities. you have a responsibility to take care of the air and the animals. See, those are your laws. Your laws reside in those things. I'll just quickly share that for you, even though I can't speak about that. But the men need to take that role. I'll share something as well. The men are struggling with the fact that I don't know more is happening with 4 women. They're struggling with that. But it's okay. People tell me decolonization sometimes is almost as painful as colonization. If we need to grow beyond colonization, we're going to experience some growing pains. That's okay. That's when we need to take care of each other and love each other through that and nurture each other. See, the worst thing that we can do is start not liking each other. That's you know what the final phases of colonization are? It's when you begin to hate yourself. The processes of colonization become so unbearable that the colonized begin to kill themselves. See, that's where we're at. And we can't do that anymore. Our young people, we're losing them far too much. Okay? Excellent.
Thank you, Sylvia. That was amazing. This is why this message is so strong. And as we carry these things out to our own communities, it's just going to make it stronger as we go. So thank you in spirit from everybody that has been part of this amazing day. We have a lot of different people here to thank, and if I start the list now, we'll be here for another hour. So I want to keep it short. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Sylvia for adding us to her completely busy itinerary. I don't know how she did it, but she's an amazing woman, a mentor, a leader, and definitely one of our role models for I Want More Calgary. And with that, we are going to have one round out song, and then we're going to close off with feeding people before everyone makes their journey. I'd just like to thank again everyone for coming. Ellery's going to do our song to close, and then we have food for everybody before we go. Wow.